On Thursday, Texas Congressman Chip Roy took to the House floor to issue a dire warning to his party's leadership. Roy, a hardline conservative, decried the renomination of Mitch McConnell as Senate Republican leader. He also remarked upon House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy, stating that while McCarthy is a friend, he personally supported Arizona Congressman Andy Biggs for leadership. Roy read his nomination speech for Biggs that had been delivered behind closed doors to fellow Republicans. Biggs did not defeat McCarthy, who still faces a potentially difficult confirmation as House Speaker due to narrower than expected margins for the Republican majority. Roy is no stranger to calling out the leadership of the Republican Party as insufficiently conservative.
Confidence that a lot of the American people have that we're going to change anything. Because you got to actually change something. We have, immediately following the election, the Re-Coronation of Mitch McConnell in the Senate. The adoption of essentially the exact same leadership team on this side of the aisle. And what is the first thing that happens in the votes, and what do Republicans do? In the Senate, 12 Senate Republicans voted for cloture just yesterday to codify, other than marriage between a man and a woman, and trample on the religious liberty rights of Americans to disagree. That happened yesterday. Mitt Romney, Utah. Trump won 58% of that vote in Utah. Cynthia Lummis, Wyoming, a 70% Republican state. Shelley Moore Capito, a 69% Republican state. Todd Young, a 57% Republican state. Roy Blunt, 57% Republican state. Joni Ernst, 53% Republican state. Rob Portman, Dan Sullivan, Lisa Murkowski, Richard Burr, Tom Tillis, Susan Collins. Republicans walking away from religious liberty, walking away from the definition of marriage. What better way to signal to the American people and your Republican supporters and voters that you've got your personal thing pulled together and you're going to represent them and change what we're doing in this town? Hard to believe the American people are cynical. Hard to believe that. Yesterday, we had a bunch of votes on rules and procedures in the Republican conference. Again, it's a private meeting, despite the fact my colleagues love to leak it out. So I don't like to get into what specifically was done behind halfway closed doors. But I'll just say this. There wasn't an overall warm and fuzzy feeling about change. Very little changed. In fact, one of the things that did change was to just pull away a 200-year-old precedent dating back to Jefferson's manual about vacating the chair. It is my belief that sitting in the Speaker's chair, you'd want to make very clear that you're confident that vacate the chair would never be a problem. Yet, Republicans circled the wagons yesterday. You know why? It's about power. It's about the fear of losing power. It's about the fear of change. It's about the fear of empowering the body to do its thing. It's about the fear of open debate. It's about the fear of regular order. It's about the fear of votes. It's about the fear of taking tough votes. I don't fear tough votes. But I will say something to my Republican colleagues. Don't talk to me about change or what you think is changing until you tell me about the process you're going to use to bring bills to this floor. Because if I don't have the right to amend it, if I don't have the right to represent my constituents, if I don't have the right to have a voice, and you're going to come down and whip me and whip my colleagues to support a bill crammed down my throat by a rules committee that I didn't vote for or select, if you're going to tell me I've got to eat that vote, then that's not representative government, and that's not the way we should do things. When you bring a bill to the floor of the House of Representatives through a rules committee and it's told to be must passed, National Defense Authorization Act, which by the way is not must pass, always considered such, appropriations bills. How many of my colleagues went to the microphone yesterday saying, look, continuing resolutions are destroying our military. We need actual appropriations. You know what? I do not disagree. But when you offer a rule change to say, I tell you what, if our Senate colleagues will work with us to get the defense bill passed, then maybe we can consider the other things. And they're saying, well, no, we don't want to bind our hands to the Senate. But that sounds nice, doesn't it? The truth is, what they don't want to do is give up the ability to do what they always do, which is try to jam through an omnibus spending bill with backroom deals cut in order to try to drive up defense spending. I support our defense. I want them to be properly funded. But I don't want them to get more blank checks. When are we going to have a debate about guns and butter? When are we going to stop spending money we don't have? When are we going to have an honest conversation in this body? Is it when we turn off those daggum cameras? Is it when we decide to actually offer amendments on the floor again? You're not going to change anything if you keep doing the same stuff. That's the truth. 2 days ago, I stood up and nominated my friend Andy Biggs for Speaker of the House as the nominee for the Republican Party. Andy did not win that vote. He's my friend. My friend Kevin McCarthy won that vote and earned over a majority of the Republican conference. That news has been reported. Virtually everything that we did in that meeting or said in that meeting was literally verbatim tweeted out in real time or leaked to the press in real time. That's the truth. I have a rule when reporters talk to me about what happens in a meeting that I tell them it's a private meeting and I don't think I should talk about it. But when things leak out in real time about what's being said and what's being done, you at some point have to go explain to the people you represent, to your supporters and people broadly, what were you doing? Because if you can't have a private debate and a private conversation among family, and it's going to be made public, well, then you've got to go explain it. So allow me to read the speech that I gave in the Republican conference meeting nominating my friend Andy Biggs. It went like this. I rise in support of my friend and colleague from Arizona to serve as Speaker of the House. Andy Biggs is a proven leader who has demonstrated leadership here in D.C. as well as serving as president of the Arizona State Senate in a slim 2-seat majority. He is a committed conservative and a good man. Andy's candidacy is not an attack on Kevin, with whom a number of us have been engaging and will continue to engage in good faith. Andy's candidacy is about his courage to stand here today, willing to take arrows, the courage to offer a debate rather than a coronation, the courage to say perhaps, just perhaps, we should consider changing the way we do things in this broken Congress, in this broken town. A town to which our constituents sent us specifically to change it. While there are many factors impacting last Tuesday's elections, the outcome is not so much murky as convicting. Our voters, Republican voters, expected a reckoning. And in so doing, they gave us nearly 5 million more Republican votes in congressional elections than my Democratic colleagues. Yes, redistricting can explain why we gained perhaps a smaller margin than anticipated. But it's not enough. What did we run on? In the 1990s, we ran specifically on crime and a bold agenda to transform Congress. In 2010 and 2012, we ran specifically on cutting spending. Meanwhile, this year, bold conservative leadership outside of this city was affirmed enthusiastically by voters. No one better represents that than Governor Ron DeSantis' overwhelming dominance in Florida. But we also saw Governor Lee in Tennessee, Governor Kemp in Georgia, Governor Reynolds in Iowa, Governor Abbott in Texas. And we saw our own colleague Lee Zeldin's powerful run for governor in New York, where he fell short but helped flip 4 seats. Because Lee ran on something, crime and the rule of law in New York. DeSantis ran on something, fighting COVID tyranny directly and fighting wokeism directly. Governor Abbott ran on something, securing the border, ravaging Texas. Meanwhile, in a midterm election against the most radical, leftist, and dangerous White House in American history, we left the Senate in Democrat hands. And we're looking at a 3 to 5 seat majority in the House of Representatives. So what do? I hear a lot about unity. Amen. But it has to be real unity. If we just say we are unified, it will not do a thing if the Rules Committee jams a disastrous immigration and border security bill like happened in July of 2018. Or consider that, to the best of my knowledge, the House Freedom Caucus, which represents about 20% of the body, has 1 member of the steering committee, which has 30 people, 1 member of the 20 standing committee chairs. Or respectfully, how about all the PAC money that was spent around this town in favor of leadership-tapped candidates? For example, Rodney Davis over Mary Miller, 2 incumbents. That's why I give you that example. But it's not about any one person or group. It is about empowerment of the whole Republican conference, not just a select few. We say we are for limited government, we Republicans, but how do you expect to decentralize the power of Washington if we cannot even decentralize our own leadership structure? Our republic is on the edge. Americans and their families are being crushed by a weaponized government, radical wokeness, vaccine mandates, open borders, crime, inflation. Yet voters don't understand how Democrats who have championed such destruction still hold so much power and largely avoided the reckoning that we talked about. We talk a lot about accountability. I ask everyone in this room, how can we hold them accountable if we cannot hold ourselves accountable when we come up short? Today's voting date, this being 2 days ago, is an arbitrary date, rushed, in an environment where many of our voters believe the system is rigged against them. A vote for Andy is a vote to shout stop and to stand athwart the status quo. It is a vote to pause and debate. It is a vote to empower every one of us to have a say and to have the ability to use our election certificate to its fullest. It is not a vote against Kevin, but a vote to force us all to the table to figure out how, not if, how we will come together as a party to reshape the conference rules, rethink the makeup of steering and the very structure and operation of the Rules Committee, and most of all, to lay out a specific agreed-to agenda and battle plan around which we can unite and to inspire and win the minds and hearts of the American people. Now, that is an internal debate among Republicans. I think it's healthy. I think it's good. The question will be, will Republicans stand for change? Or will Republicans stand up for the continuation of the status quo? The status quo ain't working. It's not. That is an indictment of both parties. That is an indictment of this institution. It is an indictment of this town. We come here called to represent the American people. We come here called to engage in debate and discourse. And as I've said before on this floor, how often have you seen a legitimate and robust debate on this floor? I'd ask all the staff to sit in the room to answer, but that's not appropriate. They're the ones sitting here all the time, along with a handful of C-SPAN viewers. Everybody knows most of the time we're preaching to an empty chamber. Most of the time, if there's a lot of people on the floor, it's only for votes, and a lot of backslapping, and a lot of, hey, when's our dinner tonight? And a lot of, hey, what are we going to do tomorrow? When you leaving town? How fast can we leave town? How quickly can we get to the airport? Chip, don't demand another vote. Dang it, I got to get to my tea time back home. Yeah. But when was the last time you saw a rigorous debate? Yeah, okay, I know we sometimes have the majority leader and the whip go back and forth on a Thursday afternoon or a Friday for an hour. But it's all talking points. It's all posturing. It's all back and forth to say, let's go out on the steps and go give our speeches. When was the last time you had, let's sit here for 3 hours and let's debate Ukraine? All of us, let's get down, let's carve up time. How about 5 days? Let's debate Ukraine. We've given them $70 billion. 70, and now the administration's asking for $37 more billion. Any of y'all got $107 billion sitting around? Well, guess what? Neither do we. We're just going to print more money. We're just going to print more money, send it to Ukraine, allegedly for a helpful goal of trying to help Zelensky stand up against Putin. Where's all that money going? Is any of that money going into the hands of certain companies that's then turning around and sending it to certain politicians here? Certain stories seem to indicate so. Any of that money going to oligarchs in Ukraine? Any of that money going into the hands of China? A lot of stories about all of that. I'm not even talking about accountability yet. I'm just saying that if we're going to vote on another $37 billion for Ukraine, shouldn't we debate it? Are we at war or aren't we? Do we have advisors there or not? Is it in our national security or not? Is it helping stability in the globe or not? Is it actually good for the people of Ukraine, bad for Putin's power? And there's a lot of good debates around all that, and the answer might be yes to some of those, no to some of those. Have you, anybody, just throwing it out there, has anybody seen a debate like that on the floor of the United States House of Representatives? I have not. And I'm here. Few people have come down and given speeches. That's not the same thing. That's not the same thing as an actual debate. The American people expect us to do our job. I expect and believe that Republicans will end the absurdity of a closed-down Capitol, the absurdity of magnetometers to go onto the floor of the House, the absurdity of proxy voting. Proxy voting extended by the current speaker till December 25th, when Santa Claus is going to bring home the magic day when COVID disappears. Obviously absurd. Our goal and our intent is to open up this body and to restore the people's house. That has to be our goal. That has to be our mission. Our mission as Republicans cannot be power for the sake of it. I would ask or suggest to my Democratic colleagues that their mission should not be opposition just for the sake of it. I am proud that I have one of the higher voting records against my own party than most of the people in my party. I believe that is attached to some amount of consistency and not attached to the whip or attached to the party power structure. Doesn't mean I'm right. I mean, I think I am. But what it means is that I've got some guiding principles that I think ought to guide how I vote. And it shouldn't be just because we're in shirts and skins or, red shirts, green shirts. It shouldn't be blue shirts, red shirts. It just shouldn't be that way. We should be able to be united on taking power back from the executive branch and restoring it to Congress. We should be united on sovereignty of our nation and defense of our borders to ensure that cartels don't exploit them for human tragedy, sex trafficking, fentanyl, pouring in and killing American people. We should be united on a strong national defense used sparingly but forcefully, not entangled in never-ending battles, and not blank checks to countries representing proxy wars. We should be united in trying to figure out how to solve our fiscal crisis that's killing our country. Every one of us should wake up. We should literally not be going home right now. We shouldn't even go home for Thanksgiving. It is so bad in such a crisis, we should not leave here until we have a plan to stop spending money we don't have. And I'll go ahead and say it right here, everything should be on the table. But we won't do that. Because if somebody brings up mandatory spending, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle will run ads like they did against Paul Ryan saying you're pushing Granny off the cliff if you dare say something about Social Security or Medicare. You mean to say there's not a single dollar that we can save out of that without it being pushing Granny off the cliff? On my side of the aisle, they will not touch defense spending. And if you do, it's sacrilegious. You cannot touch defense spending. Chip, we need more. Doesn't matter what we got to do with that. We need more. You mean there's not a single dollar we can't save at the Department of Defense? There's not a single dollar we can't repurpose? There's no way to make that run more efficiently, more effectively, to have a strong military force that will kill bad guys and blow things up when necessary? I think we could do that. We should be united in that. You can't keep spending money you don't have. You can't have open borders and a lack of sovereignty. You can't. If we can't unite on that, what in the world are we going to unite on? This body is supposed to, even in our disagreement, stand athwart the executive branch extending beyond the powers given it in the Constitution. It's supposed to. Yet we routinely give the executive branch open-ended, long runways of power, and we both do it. And we know we do it. Why shouldn't we unite to restrain the executive branch if you actually believe in separation of powers? I will say right here and stipulate, I don't care who's in the White House. I don't want the president and the executive branch to have unlimited power. I introduced a bill under Trump. I'll introduce that bill, and I have reintroduced it under Biden. I'll introduce it again in January of 2025 if I'm here, no matter who the president is. We got the American people right now trying to figure out what they're going to pass down to their kids and grandkids. I've got staff, 25, 7, 8, 30 years old, saying, am I going to be able to buy a house? Literally, like wondering, looking around the country, pulling them up on maps. Saying, how am I going to afford this? How do I afford a $500,000 house with 7, 8% interest rates? All the families across the country are trying to figure that out. They're trying to figure out why they're increasingly concerned about their safety and well-being. They're trying to figure out why kids in their schools are dying from fentanyl. They're trying to figure out why we can't just agree that there are men and there are women And we can acknowledge that we can build our society around that without that being hate. Like, these are fundamental truths or fundamental elements of our society and how we organize ourselves. We have got to find a way as a body on both sides of the aisle to bring back common sense, normalcy, and on this chamber and in this chamber, regular order. Or nothing will ever change. I am strongly of the belief that we must change. I have tried to work with colleagues on the other side of the aisle. I've introduced legislation on a bipartisan basis. I've passed legislation on a bipartisan basis, despite being, I think, by any objective measure, on the more conservative end of the spectrum of this body. I don't care whether there's a D or an R after your name. I'm going to tell you what I think. And that is directed at my colleagues on my side of the aisle, running around backslapping about getting the majority. The majority and having the majority is absolutely useless if we're unwilling to change. We have to change the way we do things around here. We have to empower members of this body to have a say in what is brought to the floor, a say to amend the legislation, a say in open and real and true debate that is driven by a desire to lead this country forward on the most basic of terms. Open up the Constitution. Look at the powers granted in Article 1, Section 8. Ask yourself whether what we're doing is connected to those powers, and then ask yourself if we are not a stronger, freer, better society if we can agree to disagree and push decision-making as close to the people and families and communities and local and state leaders so that we can actually have a republic united around ideals and not at each other's throats, because that's what we are. Because we are trying to make decisions in this town for everybody. And that's both sides of the aisle. Federalism is not just some quaint word you talk about. It's actually central to the health of this republic. We cannot function if we can't agree to disagree. And you can only agree to disagree if you're not trying to solve every problem for every person and every family and every walk of life in this chamber, doing everything and actually accomplishing nothing. The beauty and the structure of this republic and its founding is in the diffusion of power away from any one person, any one entity. The diffusion of power across 3 branches of government. The diffusion of power among federal, state, and local government. That is the greatness of this country. It is the essence of the great American experiment. That we trust the people. That we allow the people to prosper according to their own work. That we help each other. That civil society matters. But we fundamentally broke not just this institution, we are breaking our country because we believe that an unlimited checkbook gives us the right to buy votes with it. And by doing it, you're breaking the spirit of the country. You're taking away the value of work. You're taking away the value of responsibility. It's not just a campaign effort to buy student votes by paying off student loans so you can be nice. You just destroyed the entire ethic of responsibility. Of a woman like my wife, the daughter of a single mom, who went to college, made decisions about what college she would go to based on the cost of that tuition, who took on loans, who then took every step to pay them back, who drove a crappy little car in order to pay her loans off. What do you say to her and every other American like her who did it the right way, and you just say, here you go, we're going to pay off your student loans? And that's just one example of thousands, and my side of the aisle is just as guilty. Another blank check to solve something, a disease or an illness. Another blank check because Ukraine. Another blank check because you don't dare look a farmer in the eye when the farm bill comes up and says, look, man, I'm sorry, but farm plus SNAP equals a whole lot of debt, and we can't keep writing a blank check. How about another blank check for subsidies for unreliable energy? Here you go. Here's another check to buy off another company to destroy our grid, destroy our way of life, destroy American energy through a blank check. We're literally destroying the soul of the country every day we walk into this chamber. And that is not a good legacy. Everybody just walks around acting like, well, one day the think tanks and the world will come together and we'll solve all of the mandatory spending problem. That's the real deal. Stop writing blank checks. Actually have the responsibility to do your job. I'm optimistic about the American people and always have been. And there's a large block of the American people who are not going to just walk away from the republic that they inherited from their parents and grandparents and those that fought, bled, and died for this country. They're not going to walk away from the American dream for their kids and grandkids. But this body, every day that we meet, we make it harder for them. Why don't we stop that? Why don't we agree together to sit down and do the hard work that is required of us, to do it the right way, to spend within our means, to follow the constitutional order, to limit our affairs to the consequential things that unite our republic rather than meddling in the affairs of every American in every state and every local government? Why can we not sit down and agree to disagree and push decisions of disagreement down to the people where they belong and do our basic duty step by step? That is our calling. That is our opportunity. When you have a change of power and a change of leadership, it is our duty to follow the constitutional order. It is our duty to do it the right way. It is our duty to use the powers granted in the people's house to stand up in defense of the people who send us here to represent them.